Good afternoon. My name is Ilya Bezeglov. I'm a founder and the CEO of Blue Diamond Security Consulting Group. And today we're going to talk about de-escalation techniques, or I'd rather call it problem solving and conflict resolution verbal techniques. I really dive deep into de-escalation or interpersonal communication studies in 2008 when I was a freshly promoted sergeant. And in law enforcement world, being a sergeant is probably the most desirable position there is. You're still a cop, you're not part of the management team, but you get your own team. You get to go do things with your team. You get to train with your team. You get to be a kind of the ground zero leader for this team. And I was extremely proud. I was very happy. And after about 6 months, I thought I was doing an amazing job. And then I got called in to the chief's office, which is never a good thing. And the chief at the time told me that I'm not doing so great. I'm actually, in fact, I'm doing very badly. My team is intimidated by me. They they feel that I'm short. I'm tyrannical. I am basically it's a dictatorship and not a good, cohesive, you know, team. And I was absolutely devastated. I was 100% devastated at that moment because I thought that I'm actually a part of the team. My team appreciates me. I appreciate the team, and deep inside, I truly thought that I'm doing a good job. So and that's what basically started my journey into understanding the perception, the communication, the empathy, the mindfulness, and how to deal with people, especially in a leadership position, that you are inspiring and motivating versus telling people what to do. So at that moment, I went back to school. I started looking into studying emotional intelligence, social intelligence, human psychology, and I was just truly studying people. We all know people that connect with people instantaneously. They make friends easily, and for me, it was always a question: okay, is that a gift? Is there something you're born with, personality that attracts other people, that lets you influence people positively very easily, or is it a skill you can learn how to communicate people in a very positive and productive way that you get this cooperation and cohesiveness. And as I say, I went back to school and now on my doctoral dissertation study for effective communication in leadership environments. And during my journey studying the interpersonal communications between human beings, one thing I learned is that just like in sports, yes, some people are more gifted than others. They're born with athletic abilities that are superior than some other people. Not everybody can be Michael Jordan, but anyone can learn how to play basketball. The same thing with interpersonal communication. Yes, you might not be the most motivational speaker or influential person, but you can learn how to deal with a conflict, deal with stress, deal with how to communicate effectively and productively with people in a stressful environment. And one of the things that I learned is just the basic human psychology is human body cannot differentiate stress. We're not capable of doing that. What does it mean? Well, it means that whether someone put the gun in your face or you get in a verbal fight with your boss or with your significant other, your body will disperse exactly the same cocktail of chemicals. It doesn't know the difference. Yes, the amount of chemicals, the dosage is going to be slightly different because it's a different circumstances, but the reaction, physiological reaction to those two circumstances is going to be very similar. So how does it work in practice? So your initial information being intake by your what it's called reptile brain. Then it goes to your limbic brain. Again, without going into deep in the biology anatomy of human human animal, the limbic brain is a part of your brain responsible for your feelings, for your, especially your impulsive feelings. And then it goes into your neocortex, the frontal portion of your brain, so-called IQ brain, your logical brain, when it's being filtered and getting the logical reaction to the information. Give you an example. Anyone who's got kids would truly understand what I'm talking about. I had two daughters, and I lost a lot of years of life and obtained a lot of great hair during their teenage years. So let's say your child or a significant other does something incredibly, in your opinion, silly or outrageous. So let's say I've done plenty of those exercises with my kids. So your initial reaction, you want to strangle your kids. I'm sure we all felt that way, right? That's your Olympic brain reaction to this stress. And then it goes to your frontal portion of the brain, your neocortex. And then when you start thinking, well, I kind of love my kids, plus there's 25 to life for murder charges, so let's deal with that logically. And that's basically the steps with every stressful situation. You get impulsive immediate reaction from your limbic brain, and that's it. And then your neocortex picks up this kind of filtering mechanism and produces the logical explanation and consequences to this reaction. And at this point, you would say, "Hey, Ilya, thank you for very informative journey into basic human psychology and biology." But how is that connected to the topic we're discussing right now, to the topic of de-escalation, conflict resolution, and productive communication? Um, Absolutely directly. So the goal in any de-escalation communication, whether it's a hostage negotiation or the conflict fighting with your spouse, is to keep neocortex engaged as much as possible. A person cannot be hysterical and logical at the same time. One of those things is going to take over. If the person being hysterical and the limbic brain takes over, it's called emotional hijack. That's when people do absolutely impulsive, absolutely incredibly silly things, from silly to violent, without even thinking of consequences or what's going to happen. And vice versa, when neocortex take over, that's when you make a logical decision. You can be still angry, you can be still unsatisfied, you can be still, stressed, but at this point, your logic took over, and now we can communicate with that person on a very logical and productive way. And how do we do that, right? How we keep people engaged in a logical way versus let them be hysterical. Well, that's where our training comes along. Um, First of all, every time you're dealing with some sort of de-escalation or problem resolution communication trainings, if they offer you a pre-designated, pre-designed consequences of words and sentences, they selling you a snake oil. It doesn't exist. There is no magic phrase that if you tell that phrase to someone under stress, that person is going to be, the whole conflict is going to be diffused and the person is going to calm down. It does not work. We had those trainings before in my past, in my historic. That's one of them was called a verbal judo, when you tell the same phrase over and over and over again, and that's supposed to bring some positive results just based on this sentence. It's absolute, I don't want to say the word, but you guys know what I mean, right? No, it doesn't work this way. It works through a different approach. The way to deal with a person under stress, with a person who is experiencing um, shocking kind of, almost on the verge of, as I said, emotional hijack, is in stages. When they are going through stress, and as I mentioned before, the human body doesn't differentiate stress, it doesn't understand the difference. So they all go into this anger slash fear initial reaction, or we call it fight or flight. And the way to bring that to the logical neocortex kind of reaction is by validation. That's probably one of the most important ways to initiate the de-escalation communication with a person under stress. And we'll teach how to, the body language, the approaches, that how different, again, the words themselves, a lot of times secondary at best. It's how you do that, how you infuse empathy, mindfulness, how you connect with the eye contact and the body language. And we'll go through all the steps. The validation, as I said, it's the most important part. It's you validating someone's feelings, because we're all responsible for our actions. We're all responsible, take responsibility, but we're not responsible for our feelings. That thing is natural. So that's the validation process is basically to connect with a person and turn yourself from, in their opinion, enemy or perpetrator into, okay, partner, or at least a person who's trying to assist, right? When that trust is established, that's when validation is successful. Once you're properly validated person, once you build that initial connection, because otherwise, if you don't do the stage one, everything else doesn't matter. That's not going to be, it's not going to be successful. Once you do successful validation, now a person at that point is open to have a constructive, logical conversation. That's when you start presenting choices. It's very important for a person to have a choice. In every conflict, they have choices. Sometimes they're limited, sometimes they're more unlimited, but they always have choices. And giving this right to choose and explaining that process to them is very important. And again, that's you know once at that point that they can logically think, okay, well, I can choose doing these crazy things I was doing here, or this person advising me to do a couple other things that are actually more beneficial to me. They're going to make that decision. Again, in our training, we'll show the proper ways how to communicate, or I'd rather say proper is a little bit too loud of the word. We'll teach you several different approaches how to do this, because the people are different. Some people connect differently based on the culture, background, based on educational background. We're all snowflakes, but there is some certain methods that we can apply differently for different situations. So once you're done with explaining, giving them choices and explaining their options, now there's a conclusional stage, which is explaining the consequences. And that was a very tricky. I've seen in the law enforcement many, many times in my 26 years, 27 years in law enforcement, is explaining consequences. It's not the same as giving ultimatums. Ultimatums are, by definition, they're very negative. It's basically you're forcing someone to do something even though they don't like it. No, explaining consequences is, again, it's a logical path to, hey, in the previous stage, if you're making this choice, this is what's going to be consequential based on that choice, right? And that's when you guide them through the process. And again, the same, this is more, as I say, advisory versus ultimatum, when you tell them what to do and they gotta do it. Don't get me wrong, there are gonna be situations, especially for law enforcement guys, especially when it's a safety concern situation, when you have to tell them what to do and they have to do it immediately, or there's gonna be very, very severe physical consequences. This is, and again, here, this is a training for de-escalation, verbal conflict resolution. I'm assuming this is not the situation when someone's pointing a gun at you. This is someone who's being in distress, and you're trying to calm them down and convince them to do something positive for them to do. That's what explaining the consequences means. And as I say, it sounds a little simple and fast. It's not. We will go through the entire training explaining those three different stages. and how to apply them properly. Once I put together this training, it was actually so successful that not only my agency, patrol officers and detectives were using it. I was approached by the city hall people and asking them to teach just city hall employees, because they deal with public all the time. A lot of time the public is not happy with some policies and procedures that are being pursued with the city. Then I was teaching that at the police academy, and which was adjacent to college, and the college staff started asking me to teach this because it was, as I say, it was a very successful training how to de-escalate a conflict situation. So hopefully you're going to choose us, and hopefully we'll be training you. Thank you.